Chapter 14. Entry in the Realm of Paradise. We had crossed the bridge, going over the hell's spit with considerable comfort and ease. I looked back, having crossed it, and saw a caravan of lights following us, reciting the same prayer loudly. The brighter the light, the easier it was for the bearer to cross over the pit. In front of us on the horizon, I could see the scene at the gates of the paradise through door-like structures. The gatekeepers were welcoming the new arrivals by saying salam and praying for peace and blessings for them. The new arrivals were responding by reciting praise of the Lord. I looked ahead and realized that we were very close to the throne. The throne was lit up like an epicenter of Noor, or a fountain of luminosity and Noor. Its true description was impossible to capture in words. Having reached closer, our own lights paled in comparison to the brilliant resplendence of the throne. Around the throne were rows upon rows of angels who stood with hands folded obediently as they sang the enchanting praise of the Lord. Praise be to God, Lord of the worlds. As we reached closer, I saw that the angels had left a gap in their formation, and people, using this gap, were going under the throne in rows. As we got closer, we heard a voice. Welcome, my servants. Today you are entering the never-ending kingdom. Enter it forever in the protection of your Lord. Having passed the angels, as we moved ahead, I looked at Saleh questioningly. He explained, The way to paradise goes from underneath the throne, and then it turns right. But why do we have to go under the throne? Why can we not turn right straight away? I asked. Saleh smiled and replied, You want to know everything before it's time. Anyway, let me tell you the reason for it. Every human being will attain the final cleansing, or tazkiyah, after passing under the throne. But we used to do tazkiyah in the previous world. As you know, tazkiyah was the purpose of every act of religion in the previous world. The main objective of religion was to purify the human soul. It was expected of a believer to keep his body clean and consume only clean and appropriate food. Through worship, he kept his soul purified, and by following the injunctions of the religion, he kept his society, economy, and morality clean and pure. Satanic suggestions, carnal desires, and animal instincts were unclean influences that a true believer in God endeavored to avoid in order to keep his inner self cleansed. All of them were the attempts of the faithful at purifying themselves in the previous world. The Almighty has rewarded those efforts today by granting such people entry into His pure and clean paradise. However, God will purify the believers Himself before they enter His paradise. Once this happens, their souls, bodies, morals will be washed of every impurity. What do you mean? What I mean is that your physical body, containing blood, unclean secretions, odors, and other undesirable matter, will now be filled with Noor. Thereafter, you will not emit unpleasant odor, pungent perspiration, or feces. Your breath will exude fragrance. The only secretion exiting your body will be fragrant sweat. No secretions will be excreted from your ears, nose, eyes, mouth, or any other orifice. Likewise, all negative emotions such as jealousy, arrogance, spite, lust, hatred, prejudice, etc. will disappear from your heart. Your thoughts, vision, body and soul will all be purified. I spoke ecstatically. Praise be to God! It will be real fun to live such a life. In addition, your faculties and powers will increase extraordinarily. You will need neither sleep nor rest. You will not get tired or fatigued, nor will you ever get bored or weary. You will not suffer from depression or stress. You will eat and drink to your heart's content, without suffering any indigestion or the need to pass any excretions. You will have an enormous reservoir of strength. You will always remain healthy and young. Above all, you will become exceptionally good-looking and handsome. This is only an account of some of the internal capabilities and gifts from the Almighty. The external blessings and awards are yet to be revealed. Will that be the case for everyone? Indeed. However, the power, beauty, and ability will be directly proportional to one's deeds. I exclaimed spontaneously, Praise be to God, Lord of the worlds. We had reached very close to the throne while talking. Saleh said, Abdullah, I am going to leave you now. When you enter here, you will emerge at the entrance of paradise. I will meet you there along with the gatekeeper of paradise. Move forward confidently. Saleh departed, having said so. I stood there, pondering for a moment. Suddenly, a door opened in front of me. A voice said, O content soul, come back to your Lord, well pleased, well pleasing, and join my righteous servants, and enter my paradise. Encouraged by these words, I entered the door. The following Arabic words involuntarily came to my lips. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahil hamd. God is great, God is great. There is no God but one, and God is great. God is great, and praise is for Him alone. As soon as I entered, I felt that I had come into a passageway. Here, the floor, roof, and walls were all milky white. As soon as I entered, I started experiencing a very pleasant feeling. I sensed that the path was imperceptibly turning to the right. I had only gone a short distance when I was engulfed in a cloud of color and noor. A melange of rainbow colors started glittering around me. I kept moving forward in total peace and confidence. Suddenly, a sheet of noor went right through me. Along with that, every single pore of my entire being was immersed in a feeling of utter joy and ecstasy. I felt as if I was flying with the breeze. My body felt light and weightless. I felt as if my body had dissolved and I was left only in the form of my soul. Enraptured, I moved forward. In a short while, the same milky white passage was in front of me. I kept on walking through it. I could feel a sea change in my feelings. I felt that I had metamorphosed tremendously. I treaded along with an indescribable feeling of strength, power, peace, composure, and confidence. As I walked in this state, I had to stop suddenly. I was at a juncture with 8 different paths. There was an inscription on every path, detailing as to which particular door of paradise it led to. As I was trying to read the inscription, I heard a voice. Enter through the door for Shuhada. I noticed that the first door on the right was for the prophets. The door adjacent to it was for Siddiqeen, and the one next to it was for the Shuhada. I entered that door. It was also a passage that ended at a door. I exited through that door. Before I could look around, I saw Saleh standing in front of me. There was an angel standing next to him. Rather than Saleh, the angel stepped forward and welcomed me. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you to the community of everlasting paradise. Saleh has given me your book of deeds. In this book, your name is given as Abdullah. However, there are so many awards and titles along with it that I cannot decide how to address you. Saleh intervened and said, I think for the moment Lord Abdullah should suffice. It is because after Lord Abdullah's death, God sent me to welcome him by saying, Bring my servant Abdullah to me. He is a leader. Okay, Lord Abdullah, welcome to the never-ending kingdom. The angel shook hands with me as he said these words. And what is the name of our host? I inquired about the angel from Saleh. He is not the host. He is the gatekeeper, and his name is Rizwan. Rizwan spoke laughingly. You are the host here, Lord Abdullah. This is your dominion. Take a look around you. I looked around and realized that I had entered a new world. The sky and the earth over here had changed dramatically. Comprising of a new earth and a new sky, this world most definitely was complete in every respect. However, I could not find the words to describe its beauty and absolute perfection. All my life I had enjoyed an outstanding ability to explain situations using my exceptional command on language. Words served at my will, and expressions were revealed to me almost supernaturally. God had given me the ability to easily explain even the most complex realities. However, at this moment, I realized that any language of the previous world was incapable of explaining what was in front of me. My situation was similar to someone from the Stone Age suddenly finding himself in one of the modern cities of the Industrial Age. A person used to burning wood for lighting his cave would have been unable to find words to describe the rainbow displays of laser and luminescent tube lights, since there would be no expressions for those modern inventions in his vocabulary. I was experiencing a similar condition. Noticing my bewilderment, Saleh said, Lord Abdullah, there are many more things waiting to captivate you. It would be better to continue the journey towards your destination. Rizwan pointed at a path and said, This way, sir. Your residence is in that direction. We moved ahead. A fabulously plush red carpet was spread in our path. We started walking on it. Angels lined both sides, waving silk handkerchiefs with bouquets in their hands. They greeted us with words of welcome as they showered flower petals and fragrances on us. It was a long path. One reads or hears fairy tales of imaginary lands far away in the fairyland when one is young. This path seemed to lead to such a fairyland. I was able to see the sky-high buildings of this fairyland from a distance. It was a scene composed of magnificent buildings and glorious palaces set on a background of lush green mountains, with the base of still waters on the front and a canopy of pearl blue sky at the top, all of which looked like a scene straight out of a fairy tale. I said to Rizwan, Countless people are entering paradise at the moment. That must be keeping you very busy. Do you have enough time to spare and accompany me? He laughed and said, The time has stopped here. Understand it in this way. The time interval between two people entering the paradise is quite long. Those who have been awarded lesser levels of paradise may enter it centuries after the earlier inhabitants. Looking worriedly towards Saleh, I asked, "What about Naima?" Rizwan answered my query instead. "Lord Abdullah, you have entered the paradise very early. Your wife and others will enter after some time. However, you have lots to do here until they arrive. You need to familiarize yourself with your paradise and also with the servants and staff that manage this world ruled only by you." "Really? Who else is here?" "Here are a few of your more prominent servants." I noticed that behind the rows of the angels, there was a row of boys on either side. They seemed to be in their early teens. I realized that they were the ghilman. They were the boy servants referred to in the Quran as pearls. Indeed, they were like pearls, perhaps even more sparkling, pure and glistening. Having seen them, I realized why the Almighty had promised in the Quran to fully explain the true nature of all such heavenly phenomena only in the hereafter. Human languages of the previous world had a very limited vocabulary of similes, metaphors, and terminologies. The facts that had become apparent today were of a nature suited best to viewing and experiencing rather than describing in words. The case of the ghilman was also similar. Like the angels, the ghilman welcomed me enthusiastically. However, as I approached them, they went on their knees and bowed their heads one after the other, as if a string of pearls was slowly unraveling at my feet. When I saw that the column of ghilman was never ending, I said to Saleh, "If these prominent servants are so many, how many of them are there in all? Secondly, what use will I have for so many servants?" Rizwan, who was more knowledgeable about paradise, replied instead of Saleh, "You are the ruler of a dominion that stretches from earth to the skies. The Almighty will assign numerous tasks to you to perform in this dominion. You will delegate them to these servants. Their responsibilities will range from your personal service to the bureaucracy and administration of your glorious dominion." It goes to prove that even paradise is not a place to have complete rest and leisure. One will have to work even here, I commented with a chuckle. "Don't worry, the work over here will not be a chore, rather it will be enjoyable. However, there will be no dearth of the sort of leisure and the rest that people strived for in the previous world. But what will be the nature of work? All I know is that you will rule without having to face the problems that accompanied authority in the previous world. Only God knows the real nature of the tasks expected of you. He will provide you details during the grand gathering at the court." As we walked further, Saleh said, "Here come the maidens of paradise." This reminded me of the poetic eulogy Saleh had showered them with when we were in the plain of judgment. At that time, I had thought that he was exaggerating. Now that I had seen them, I realized that his poem was at best an understatement. The reality was far better than what Saleh had vainly endeavored to portray. As we approached them, they welcomed us with a gesture quite different to that of the ghilman. Instead of going on their knees, they sat down on the floor with their legs folded underneath them and bending over, bowed their heads. I stopped and asked Saleh, "What are they doing?" Saleh chuckled, "They have laid their eyes and hearts in your way." Rizwan elaborated further. "In fact, the posture is to allow them to spread their hair on the floor to provide comfort to your feet." At his explanation, I saw that they had bent, having jerked their heads back and forth in such a manner that their hair now lay spread across the path on both sides, like a soft silky carpet. I had seen such manifestation of beauty for the first time in my life. I smiled and moved forward, gracefully, brimming with confidence. As soon as my feet touched their hair on this surreal path, a wave of rapture surged through my soul. I realized for the first time that although I was wearing the softest, velvety, and finest princely clothes, my feet were bare. Rizwan provided more information about the maidens and Ghilman. Don't think for a moment that their beauty is only skin deep, Lord Abdullah. They possess extraordinary strengths and capabilities. They have the ability to turn this world topsy-turvy at your command. Yet, it is only because of their deep love for you that they consider it a huge honor even to fill a goblet of wine for you. However, you do not have the slightest idea about the astonishing powers the Almighty has endowed them with. I did not say anything. I felt extremely grateful to the one who had granted this helpless, humble servant with such sterling honor as a reward for such meager good deeds. Tears welled in my eyes and started to trickle down my face as I bowed in prostration. Words of praise for the Lord were on my tongue as I remained in this position for some time. Suddenly, I heard a sound similar to the slight patter of raindrops. Saleh patted my back and said, "Abdullah, get up and see the result of acceptance of your prostration." As I got up, an astonishing scene awaited me. The faces of the maidens and Ghilman were ecstatic. Their laps were full of the most beautiful glistening pearls. I looked at Saleh for an explanation. He replied, "The Lord gave them a gift on your behalf. As tears shed from your eyes, the Lord conveyed his approval by sending down a rain of pearls. It is a gift for them on the auspicious occasion of your arrival, and will remain to be their most cherished possession." We strolled forward. Eventually, this welcoming queue came to an end at a huge door. Its two panels opened automatically even before we reached it. Rizwan turned back from there, and I entered my residence accompanied by Saleh. I used the word residence since words like cottage, hut, home, house, building, bungalow, villa, mansion, castle, palace and city, etc. were inadequate to describe it. It was a vast land that extended as far as the eyes could see. It was a collection of towering palaces placed on lush green mountains with serene valleys extending in between. I could see charming gardens as well as glistening streams and rivers meandering through the green valleys. As I struggle to describe the scenery in words, I must caution that it is not possible to truly capture in words the beauty, majesty, and the real nature of what lay in front of me. As my eyes look in the vast surroundings, I asked Saleh, "Which of these palaces is mine?" He laughed and said, "None of them. They belong to your senior servants. Your residence is a long distance from here. If you wish, you can walk, but it may be better to use your transport." He gestured to move in a certain direction. I saw a magnificent, though relatively small house close by. Although it appeared small compared to the other structures around, but on the scale of the previous world, it was like a huge palace. Interestingly, I would not have noticed it had Saleh not pointed it out to me, as it was made of crystal clear, see-through glass. As Saleh moved forward, I followed, assuming that there would be some sort of vehicle parked inside. However, he took me straight to a room in the middle of the house. I could see regal chairs in the room, adorned with jewels and ornaments. Saleh gestured to me to sit on one of them and said, "This is your transport. It will take you to your destination. I will leave you now to go there on your own, so you realize that you are the sole ruler of this place. You do not need any support, any servant, or any angel. Whatever you desire will happen automatically. I will meet you at the other end, at your home." Before I could say anything, Saleh left the room. I was in a state of shock. In fact, I had been in a state of perpetual shock from the moment I had entered the paradise. I felt dazed because of the pleasant shocks that I was continuously receiving every few moments. I managed to collect my thoughts in a while. I thought about where I was and why I was there. I concentrated on what Saleh had just mentioned to me. I repeated Saleh's words in my mind. An extraordinary confidence developed in me as I realized the implications of what Saleh had said. I felt that my rule had begun in earnest right from that moment. However, the question that warranted an answer was how to get my ride going. I thought in my heart that it did not matter if Saleh was not there anymore. My Lord was still with me, just like He had been with me throughout every second of my life. I suddenly remembered the verse of Quran stating that by saying the words Subhanallah, all praise be to the Lord, one's every wish will be fulfilled in the paradise. I whispered, Subhanallah. The house began to rise in the air. I was ecstatic. I said loudly, "In the name of God shall be its running course and its resting anchorage." Those were the words of Prophet Noah as he sat in the ark at the time of the great flood. My ride started to move forward slowly in a certain direction. I began to enjoy the stunning scenery below. The house was still drifting slowly when I realized that it was the time of dusk underneath. Soon there was darkness all around. Along with that, the glass house became lit with a pearly white fluorescence. Yet I could not find the source of the light anywhere. My journey continued through the darkness. Outside it was pitch dark as far as the eyes could see, but it did not instill any fear or concern. A deep layer of silence sat on top of the layer of darkness. The silence also did not invoke any fear or worry. Instead, like the darkness, this silence also instilled a strange feeling of serenity and tranquility in me. I felt as if there were songs without sound, embedded deep in this silence, that were subtly trying to entice the heart, bypassing the ears, as if there were melodies scattered in the surroundings without any audible music, seducing the heart into a mesmerizing dance. I could figure out only one reason for the darkness. It was probably there to make the light glowing like a lamp at a distance more prominent. That light was not of a star because, like the earth, the sky was also cloaked in darkness. The light was emanating from the peak of a lofty mountain. It looked so beautiful and pleasing in the darkness that it was impossible to pull my gaze away from it. Then I thought that there was nothing else to see in the darkness anyway. I wished in my heart to see the panoramic view below with the help of this light. I said, Subhanallah, and the darkness vanished. I could see the view below clearly now. There was a vast green field spread out underneath as far as the eyes could see. In the center was a mountain made of white marble. The mountain was not a part of any mountain range. Rather, it was a solitary cliff standing on its own in the middle of the plain, as if someone had artificially hammered it in the ground. Its peak rose up into the sky and tapered off sharply like the tip of a spear. However, the mountain did not end at the tip. In fact, the tip served as the foundation of a glorious and magnificent palace, which had been built on top of the mountain. This scene seemed like a masterpiece of an artist's imagination rather than reality. The reason was that plain fields do not have such lofty peaks on them. Lofty peaks do not have such finely chiseled ends, and huge palaces do not exist on top of such narrow pointed peaks in reality. However, those were the limitations of the previous world. That world of trials and physical laws was no more. A new world had come into being now that revolved around my wishes and me. I realized that after passing through a journey spanning millions of years, the humans had finally entered an era of monotheism. The angels had taken over affairs of the world and turned all impossibilities into possibilities. They had created a world where darkness was devoid of any fear and silence was free of any dread. It was a world where darkness was only to highlight the light and silence was a medium of musical melodies. I wished for it to be dark again. The darkness soon prevailed. It reminded me of the dwellers of hell. I wished to view their state. I said, Subhanallah again. Immediately, a screen appeared on my left. The first scene that appeared was highly gut-wrenching. It was a view of the central region of hell. Horrendous and powerful angels were pulling out hideous-looking people from the fire. They were shackled in heavy, barbed chains and tight collars around their necks. The flesh on their faces was severely burnt. Their attire was made of charcoal. Thus, the flames burnt the flesh even more. They were screaming in pain. They were crying and pleading to God to have another chance of going back to the previous world. They were saying that if that were to happen, they would never indulge in tyranny, rejection of the truth, or injustice. However, it was futile to cry or scream now. The inmates then started to scream and beg for water. The angels dragged them over to some streams. Steam was rising from the boiling water of those streams. The inmates were so thirsty that they were compelled to drink it. They would drink the boiling water, then scream and pull away. However, after a short while, their intense thirst compelled them to go back to the same water once again, like a desperate, thirsty animal. Due to this, the skin of their faces had come off and their lower lips had drooped down. I sought God's protection after witnessing these scenes and thanked Him for saving me. Ignoring those scenes, I started to look at the eye-catching light emanating from my palace at the mountain top. My vehicle was gradually moving towards it. I wished to view it before I reached there. As usual, I said, Subhanallah, and instantly my room transformed into a cinema. However, the screen was not only in front of me, but also all around me and above me. I could see scenes of the palace interior like a 3D movie. I felt as if I was present inside the palace and was able to hear and see everything. There was an atmosphere of celebration all around today. My palace was lit like a bright bowl of light on top of the tall mountain peak. It had lights without any light bulbs, and its chandeliers were lit without candles or any other source. It resembled a bright island in an abyss of darkness due to the luminescence of that light emitting from every nook and corner of the palace. It looked more of a fountain of rainbow colors and noor. Through my eyes, it enchanted my senses every passing moment with a new delight. Who would have thought that mere light could be so delightfully enchanting? No eye would have ever witnessed it. Periodically, melodious tunes would playfully touch the strings of my heart and then echo in the environment around me. Who would have thought that music could be so melodious? No ear would have ever heard it. The world around me was not just filled with melody, but was also enveloped in a light fragrance. Who would have thought that any fragrance could be so pleasing to the senses? No human could have ever imagined it. The activity of servants as they went about doing their chores in the pathways of the huge palace gave the impression of pearls scattered around. Their faces were sparkling and attires beautiful. Their dialogues were delightful and mannerism attentive. The destination of these servants seemed to be an expansive garden located in one of the corners of the palace. This garden presented the look of a bouquet of lush greenery. Flowers and trees were presented in a way so stunning that it would have easily surpassed any human standard of horticulture. Thousands of colors were spread across the garden. Just the shades of green were so many that it was impossible to count. Innumerable fruits adorned the tall trees. Each tree was distinguished by the unique colored leaves dressing it. Thousands of species of plants with colorful blossoming flowers surrounded them. These elements were not placed randomly. The true beauty of amalgamation of colors and varieties was in the way the plants were placed and trees had been located. This garden was like the enchanting sonnet of a poet, in which the strings of words were strung together in accordance with their poise, emphasis and ending to create a masterpiece. Pathways made of precious stones like pearls, sapphire, ruby and emeralds dazzlingly accentuated the stunning beauty of this garden. Between these spectacular pathways were running streams. Their beauty was enticing to the eyes, while their resonance had a soothing effect on the ears. Some of them were of milk, and some of pure fresh water. Some had burgundy wine flowing in them, and some were filled with honey. Each stream had a unique fragrance that mesmerized the passers-by. Along the streams, at short distances between the trees, were sitting areas comprising of regal seats and couches bejeweled with diamonds and emeralds, and furnished with luxurious rugs and comfortable cushions. This beautifully laid garden with attractive footpaths, scenic streams, colorful flowers, lush leaves and delicious fruits on offer as rewards for a visit had no boundary walls to protect it. There was an unfathomable but pleasant sense of coolness inside. Every so often a draught of breeze would fill the atmosphere with a new fragrance. One could easily see the views outside to a great distance from within the garden. The darkness outside was slowly engulfing everything. Astonishingly, there was no sign of it inside the garden. The lights from the tall buildings of a spectacular city were visible over a wide area. Flickering of these lights in the distance seemed like millions of glowworms glimmering in the night. The milky light of stars far away twinkled in the dark sky, making its appearance even more striking. One glowing light in the sky stood out particularly as it slowly moved towards the palace. I realized that it was the vehicle inside which I was viewing these scenes. It was all due to the blessings of the Almighty that enabled me to see my vehicle from outside heading towards the palace, even though I sat in it. I saw Saleh sitting in the garden and was bemused to see that he was already there ahead of me. The palace he sat in was probably the most beautiful part of the garden. The floor in there was like clear glass. It was so lucid that one could clearly see beneath it for miles. Under the glass floor, there was a dusky hue all around. A lush green prairie draped in colorful flowers was visible below, along with the numerous brooks running through it. The twilight made this picturesque scene even more enchanting. It was a beautiful evening when one looked under the floor, whereas above the floor all around was a fragrant and gleaming night. On one hand there were rivers flowing beneath the floor, and on the other there were fruit-laden branches of trees above, desperately waiting for a mere gesture of the hand to stoop and present their bounties to savor. Some servants were char-grilling bird and animal meat in a corner. The aroma in itself spoke for its amazing taste. In addition, it did not lead to satiety. Therefore, one could eat as much as one desired. Nearby, clearer than crystal chalices and goblets were stacked in an exquisite manner, waiting for the function to start, so that they could quench the thirst and desires of their masters. As I watched these scenes, I had a sense of déjà vu. I then recalled that I had seen all of them in Barzakh. At the same time, I felt that the speed of my vehicle had slowed down. I signaled and the scene disappeared. I was about to reach my destination. From the higher altitude, the dazzling palace looked absolutely amazing. I desired to continue to enjoy the view from above. In order to do so, I hovered around it a couple of times. It then occurred to me that Saleh was waiting for me, so I decided to land. The vehicle, or one could call it Sheesh Mahal, a palace of mirrors, slowly landed in the area where Saleh was waiting for me. Saleh greeted me with a loud chuckle as I got off the vehicle and said, "I thought you mistook this palace for the throne and started to do tawaf around it. It is good that you didn't go around 7 times." Saleh's interesting comment also made me laugh as I moved forward to embrace him. Separating himself from me, he said, "Would you like to view your palace, or would you rather eat first?" "I am captivated by the beauty of this place. I could never imagine that beauty could take such shape and form," I replied. "Abdullah, whatever you see till the grand gathering at the court is what the Quran had referred to as nuzul, meaning just a welcoming present. What you will receive after the gathering will be something no one has ever seen, heard, or imagined." "You are correct, Saleh. These things have been mentioned in the Quran and sayings ascribed to the last prophet, peace be upon him. However, paradise is different from the description in Quran. I mean, it is way more beautiful than what was mentioned in the book," Saleh replied. "The reason for that is that the picture of paradise painted in the Quran was in the context of what Arabs at the time of its revelation considered to be the ultimate expressions of luxury and enjoyment. So the things considered particularly luxurious by them were mentioned in the book, but it would be foolish to think that paradise is limited only to those luxuries." I agree. It would have been difficult for the Arabs of that time to even imagine the luxuries that were invented in my era, called the Information Age. Therefore, Quran focused on the ideas of welfare and extravagance imaginable by a man living in the agricultural age. But my friend, the vehicle I just used surpassed even my wildest imagination. You will come across many things that will have the same effect. Anyway, what are your immediate plans? Ignoring his question, I started to look around at the beautiful surroundings. I wanted to absorb the details of everything around me through my eyes. When Saleh noticed my distraction, he said jokingly, "Perhaps you are looking for the maidens. They came out to welcome you, but now they have gone back to their homes. However, if you wish—" Before Saleh could complete his sentence, I replied earnestly, "In my time, there were two major ideological leaders of mankind. One was Karl Marx, who considered stomach and hunger as the most important reality and motivator in life, while the second was Freud, who deemed—" I left the sentence incomplete and paused for a moment. Saleh chuckled loudly. Smelling the strong aroma of roasted meat, I added, "And at this point in time, I intend to follow the lead of the great Karl Marx." In the world, lives of all humans were spent as slaves of time. The wheel of time moved forward, passing through seconds and minutes, hours and days, and months and years. Changing seasons depicted the passage of time. However, in this new world, time was enslaved to human beings. The time as measured in seconds, hours, months, years, decades, centuries, and millennia was no more. The days when time would pass one by were gone, like the days bygone. The only remnants of time left behind were the various times of day and the seasons. Even those were under one's control. Different parts of this empire, ruled by human beings, had different weathers and times of the day, and all at the same time. Therefore, there were places where the morning twilight was present throughout. In other parts, the silence of early afternoon could be experienced, while the gentle warmth of late afternoon existed in some areas on a permanent basis. The horizon was colored crimson by the dusky hue of twilight in some regions of this realm, while other areas close by were enveloped by the deep hush of late night. At any given time, one could view early twilight before dawn in one section and the light of the full moon in another, starry nights in one and the soothing shades of spring in the other, or if one wished, one could enjoy thousands of colors of the fall elsewhere. The weather was always calm and pleasant at the abodes of people who lived in paradise. However, in order to cater to their wishes, some places were in the grip of a freezing winter, while others had the desert summer climate in them. Still, there were regions experiencing perpetual rainy season, or only the colors of autumn or spring. In short, all times of day and seasons were readily available for the fulfillment of one's desires. I was now the exclusive and sole ruler of an enormous dominion. My long-time associate Saleh continued to be my friend and companion in this new world. He was the one who informed me that this dominion was a part of a vast universal system. According to the division of this system, the residence of all people of paradise was on the same earth on which humans were tested for hundreds of thousands of years. The people of paradise were divided into two classes, the masses and the elite. The former were those who had been awarded one or more planets or stars. Obviously, instead of being balls of fire, the stars had now turned into beautiful havens and pleasant valleys. Elite were the ruling class of paradise. Foremost amongst them were the Shuhada and the Siddiqeen. They had been made lords over galaxies containing millions of stars. I was the lord of a similar galaxy. Above them were the prophets of God, who ruled over countless groups of galaxies. It remained a mystery, however, as to who shall be awarded which area to rule, as well as the nature of tasks to be performed in it. Saleh informed me that all of that would be revealed on the day of the grand gathering at the court. On that occasion, everyone would be formally awarded his or her dominion, for now everyone was residing on earth, and according to Saleh, the gifts that people had received so far were only of the nature of welcoming presents. The real blessings and awards that no one had ever seen, heard, or imagined were to be formally presented on the occasion of the grand gathering at the court. Until then, the protocol being awarded to people was according to their status. This protocol manifested itself during the parties and the gatherings of the people of paradise. Those gatherings were mainly held in honor of other residents. Not everyone had yet entered paradise. However, a lively society was already thriving there. On the side of the plain of judgment, the Salihin were entering the paradise one by one. But as the time had stopped here, the interval between two persons entering the paradise was in thousands of years on this side. I suspected, and Saleh later confirmed, that the grand gathering would take place once everyone had entered the paradise. Such was the early life in paradise. In the meantime, many people were celebrating and having get-togethers. Majority of these gatherings were hosted by the prophets in honor of the Salihin from their nations, as well as from the nations of other prophets. I met a number of people during those gatherings. I used to interact with very few people in the world, but now I noticed that I had become unusually social. I started to make new friends. We shared our life stories and experiences. It was not unexpected, yet I was quite surprised to discover that most of those who had succeeded at the very outset, hence the elite, were poor and underprivileged in the previous world. I particularly noticed that amongst those exalted dignitaries of the highest order, there was a common trait. All of them had faced severe hardships and heartaches, but they persevered, always depended on God and God alone, accepted their fates with fortitude, and remained grateful to the Almighty in the worst of circumstances. One day, Saleh introduced me to my parents. My parents had died in an accident soon after my birth. However, as long as they were alive, they remained devoted servants of the Lord. I found out that they had also wished me to dedicate my life to guide people towards the way of the Almighty, but the fatal accident did not allow them the opportunity to do so. Nevertheless, our most compassionate God honored their commitment. The providence of the Almighty created opportunities throughout my life that allowed this orphan boy to fulfill their wishes. I had this incredible realization only after entering the paradise, that all I attained was because of my parents. In addition, due to their intention to commit me to this work, they also reaped a share of the reward of every righteous deed that I had committed in my life. Thus, my meeting with my parents also served to introduce me to a new aspect of the blessings of my Lord.